and shit has been for reals. Uh, it's been pretty fucking fucked up, I tell you that much, man. My friend, my buddy old pal, yeah, a lot of shit's happened. Um, and I'm not gonna summarize it, you can just watch another video. Or should I say the previous video, if you go in like my past videos and stuff, whatever. Or if I'm on YouTube, whatever, you'll get the gist. It's much easier to just watch it than to summarize. For me at least, because I don't keep details straight. And I ramble quite a bit. So, we're gonna just jump right back in. The only thing I'll say for context is we're lighting candles that will cast different kinds of love spells on Gilem to basically fuck him up. So let's see. The second candle is lit. Its name is Philia, the love for friends. The yellow candle shone and danced with her breath. Let this candle burn until its wick is spent. Encourage friendship. Bring forth memories. Let me walk in his halls without any suspicion. Let me rummage through his belongings invisibly. His journal. He guards his journal fiercely. I must find it. Rosa adjusted her coat as she sat on one of the reserved seats. The theater was packed. The air buzzed with excitement. She hadn't realized this many people would come tonight. Oh, Mother, I wish they would stop staring at me. And why not? This was Madame Catherine Parid's first solo concerto. Oh, so we're flashing back again. Her name had been slowly gathering recognition over the past few years. It was feasible to expect a full house. Still, the turnout was more than they'd expected. Paris had taken Rosa and Catherine by surprise. The sheer number of people and their liveliness were well above the usual sight of their small town. Catherine was obviously thrilled with the opportunity to play in such an esteemed venue for her debut. Rosa tried her best to keep her anxiety under control. Oh, me too. This was for Catherine. Yes, for her. This was her night. Rosa took a deep breath and released it slowly. It relaxed her. I hope the show starts soon. Rosa's eye drifted towards the stage and then to the throng of people gathered on the far left. In the middle of the huddle stood a familiar shape of a man. He had his back to her, but the posture and the build were unmistakable. That's Guillem. Her heart made a sudden, gleeful jump. She was delighted that he had made Catherine's show. He had been traveling extensively recently. What if she walked over and made sure? Guillem would greet her kindly. She was sure Catherine would be thrilled to know he was here. Rosa pondered for a bit, reminded of a sudden wince of pain. Soon the master of ceremonies obliged people to take their seats. Guillem turned around and walked towards her. He stopped midway and took a seat without noticing her presence. Rosa seemed deep in thought. What's wrong, sweetheart? Is something bothering you? Nothing, Mother. Don't lie to me. I just didn't expect to see him here, that's all. Oh, I see. It is the same problem, isn't it? Are you worried about Catherine now that he's here? That filthy man again. I'm sure Catherine will be pleased. Whatever will she think now that her lover's back? I bet she would rather spend all her time with him as usual. My poor darling. Always running after her star. I wonder how long until she's tired of you constantly tagging along. You brag to me that you share everything like sisters. Does that include Guillem, too? Oh, you're making life so complicated, darling. Why do you even bother yourself with these people? It's obvious he's never going to look at you. Do you like being so miserable? It saddens me to see you like this. He has eyes only for Catherine. Must you always impose your presence like a little dog? It's not like that, Mother. We're friends. Friends? Darling, friendship is nothing but a shallow kind of relationship. People change friends as easily as the weather. You don't even remember the friends you make at a certain age. Family is more important. I'm the only one who will care for you forever, darling. A mother's love will endure. This bond can never be broken by time or absence. Family lifts you up. It saves. Of course you feel this way. You see them often. But when you lose touch, you're left with nothing but a collection of strangers. And believe me, my dear, they will leave. They always leave. You amuse them now. But soon they will abandon you too. Rosa's tongue felt bitter in her mouth. She was filled with annoyance for her mother. Wasn't happiness as fleeting as friendship? Yet it was not any less real than sadness. Yes, family was important. These familial bonds kept her from losing herself. It was her rock, her foundation. But were these bonds the only constant value? These friends. These were people who accepted her. They shared laughter and tears, their own regrets and dreams. In her heart she had found a home with them. What more was needed? Rosa's confused feelings began to arrange themselves neatly in her mind. Guillaume and Catherine's happiness was important to her. That was the main thing. She knew they felt the same way for her. Her insecurities were real, but they were insignificant. If anything, they were bittersweet. She had no regrets. Sorry, I need a drink of water. I've been talking for like 2 hours. For the first time in her life, she wanted to talk back to Mother. She bit her lip, quelling the nerves as she opened her mouth to speak. I know that. What? I know that Catherine matters more to him than I do. I know they might abandon me one day for whatever reason. It might be today, or next year, or even sooner. But that doesn't matter in the long run. I'm happy with them. We've had years together that I will treasure, like I treasure memories of you too, Mother. My memories of you keep me sustained. That is why I love you. The years we spent together, no matter how fleeting, are still worth something. So let me care for them right now. Everything changes, but nothing is lost. Rosa was sure she had read it somewhere. Rosa waited for Mother to answer with a vicious voice, to burst out screaming at her cheekiness. But no voice came. Rosa smiled to herself. The lights dimmed. A low hush descended on the pews. Soon Catherine entered, clad in the loveliest gown and an even lovelier smile. She was beautiful. She belonged on the stage. The lights shone on her, but they paled in comparison to her radiance. Catherine bowed to the audience and took a seat in front of the piano. She began to play. Rosa gripped the handle of her seat. She felt surges of emotion with every note. A kind of energy passed through her, touching her skin and making her break into goosebumps. Oh, Catherine! Rosa hadn't known of such an effect before this moment. Music that could so strike the heart as if it was fiddling with the soul. It was different from practice, different from when she was performing in front of smaller groups. This was a stage, and here was a woman with strings. She was tugging the right keys, touching your heart and electrifying your soul. Rosa realized she wasn't alone in this feeling. The whole room was mesmerized. She looked at the lady beside her seat. She had her hand to her open mouth. A teardrop dangled precariously on her eye. The man to her left seemed to have forgotten to blink. Rosa beamed and savored a rush of kinship with them. They were experiencing the same emotions with her. It made her love them just a little bit. Rosa closed her eyes and savored the night. A bead of sweat fell from Catherine's chin. She was out of her body now. Her stress from the beginning of the show had thawed and turned into passion. It ran down her fingers to the keys. It did not escape Catherine's notice that most people in the crowd came to the show to gawk at her. Catherine Paris, the one that the infamous Marquis de Gaulle has been courting for years. Didn't he pay for this event? Lucky broad. Catherine Paris, I heard she was some pianist. Any good? Who knows? Must be. If even that Marquis is chasing her. Catherine Paris, some female pianist. Pretty face, nice flesh on her. Let us watch your show. Her fingers caressed the keys, playing them with the force of her heart. Did she play to prove them wrong? Her music saturated the theater with her fervor. No, not to prove them wrong. To set it right. Catherine Paris is my name. I am more than just a pretty face, and I am playing this piece for you. It is my gift. Let me touch your soul. Rosa felt her eyes get moist. This was Catherine's heart transcribed into music. All energy and beauty with the strength of the wind. The mischief of a sudden gale that whips at ladies' skirts and tips gentlemen's hats. The cold breeze that carried the loneliness of the coming winter. Everyone in the audience felt it. Rosa searched for Guillaume's face in the darkness. She couldn't see him clearly. But it didn't matter. She knew what he was feeling. She felt it too. Rosa's heart began to ache. It was a sting she didn't know how to name. After the show, Rosa greeted Catherine in her backstage dressing room. Oh, she looks so pretty! She was smothered in flowers from the audience. Sweat glistened on her forehead. Catherine gave her a tight hug. Congratulations, Kath. You were marvelous on stage. Thank you, Rosie. Catherine covered her cheeks with her hands. Oh, I'm still shaking. The excitement from the stage hasn't left. Look at my hands. Oh, dear. So I'd call this show a success, yes? Pour the champagne, Shelley. It is a night to remember. Catherine and Rosa hugged again. Let me just finish up here, Rosa. Then we'll celebrate properly. Two young, ravishing ladies sampling the best of what Paris has to offer. I like it. Rosa laughed. Just don't let go of my hand. You might get lost being so starry-eyed. She was teasing, but smiling brightly all the same. I would never! Anyway, shall I meet you outside in a few minutes? Very well. I'll see you later. Rosa was thankful to leave the backstage area. She'd almost forgotten her anxiety during the show, but the backstage was an ill reminder of the crowd. She looked forward to the night ahead, wondering vaguely why she hadn't mentioned Guillem's presence to Kath. She shrugged it off. It had simply slipped her mind, that was all. Catherine went back to her dressing room, humming as she was about to grab her coat. She wasn't the least bit tired. Visions of city, exploring new sights, and gaining experiences made her giddy with excitement. It will end the night on the best note, she was sure. A small knock interrupted her thoughts. Who's there? Catherine turned around, and the cheerful smile froze on her face. The Marquis peeked from the open door and stepped inside. Hello, Kath. A tingling passed through Catherine's neck. Although she was aware he had returned, this was the first time she had seen him in 2 years, after she rebuked his intentions of wooing her. Catherine shook her head at the memory. They grew up together. It was normal to develop feelings for someone you shared most of your life with, was it not? Yet Catherine had promised herself not to dabble with the Marquis. With all the rumors and the past flings, it felt like she knew too much. Too complicated, she had reasoned. The rumors were still alive in some circles. But hadn't Guillem come clean with his romantic escapades? Hadn't he vowed to be faithful since he had made his intentions clear? Who to believe? Perhaps it was possible that... Catherine pushed away the insinuation of that last thought and rearranged her face into a merry smile. She curtsied. My lord Marquis, thank you for coming. That last bit came out too loud in her ears. It felt like her voice was compensating. She suppressed a groan. I hope you found the show satisfactory. My lord Marquis? What happened to Gilly Monster? At once the memories fled in her mind. That used to be her greeting every time she'd visited him back then. She would scream that when she saw him, right before she flung her arms around his neck. Catherine didn't know what to do. Suddenly her hands, the hands that had never betrayed her, felt like they belonged to someone else. She cleared her throat and felt the smile harden on her face. Pardon my past slights, sire. I was a bit of a precocious child. After all, I must give my due respects to the sponsor of this event. Thank you, by the way. It didn't have to be so extravagant. Wasn't it your dream to play in Paris, Kath? I thought your debut would be the perfect opportunity to fulfill that dream. The Marquis stepped into her quarters and closed the door. Catherine flinched, afraid the small room would draw them even closer. Just the effect that he wanted, probably, the sly fox. She floundered for a bit and contented herself in fussing with the flowers on the table. She should chase him out. Why wasn't she chasing him out? Merde, Catherine. I didn't think you'd be attending tonight, sire. Weren't you traveling? Yes, I was. But I wouldn't miss your concerto for the whole of France. Guillem stepped forward. And it seems my investments were well placed. Guillem drew closer to Catherine, so near that she could smell the mint in his breath. He appeared to reach out. Yeah. He touched her face, but changed direction at the last minute. Oh, these flowers are from the Duke. How pretty. He examined the card dangling a hair away from Catherine's ear, trying to look fascinated by the piece of decorative paper. Then he stepped back, grinning like an idiot. He really has great taste. Wherever did you learn that, muckhead? If he thought that kind of ploy would make her swoon, then he was dead wrong. In fact, all it made her want to do was wipe that stupid grin off his face, with the backside of a vase. Yes, he does, doesn't he? She gritted her teeth, unable to take the acidic edge off her voice. It wouldn't be so hard. All she had to do was grab the neck of the expensive vase and fling it at his head. She wasn't sure if the vase would break. Maybe not. Maybe she would need to hit him again for the full effect. Catherine, did you hear what I just said? Huh? I said, now that I'm back in town, would you consider playing for me again? It was part of our original arrangement, after all. She felt the tendons in her neck tighten. I have a full schedule this week, sire, but I'll let you know when I'm free. Oh. Sire, I must retire for the night. I'm exhausted from my performance, after all. Excuse me. Catherine turned around and went for her coat, but she felt Guillaume grab her hand. Wait, They stared at each other for a couple of seconds. Guillaume looked like he was about to say something. His mouth opened and closed as if debating the correct words in his head, but he just dropped Catherine's hand a moment later. I'm sorry. You're right. You must be tired. His shoulders dropped. Catherine felt a tinge of disappointment, but she ignored it quickly. Guillaume let out a sigh. I know I'm not good at this, Catherine. Oh, what do I know? You seem to do just fine. You have an amazing track record. Huh? Catherine folded her arms over her chest with a pout. Oh, that? That's just because of my face. What? Most people think I'm very deep and thoughtful when I stare at them like this. I just run with it. Catherine bit her lip to prevent the chuckle from escaping, but the laughter burst out from her. He hadn't changed at all. Before she could stop herself, a mischievous smile appeared on her lips. No, no, actually it's your inability to make big gestures, Gilly. Huh? Well, look at you! She copied his tight, alert posture. You stand stiff as a board. I guess it fools people into believing you're a graceful, dashing soul. Guillaume made a pout. I am dashing, though. Maybe. Au contraire, monsieur. I did have the misfortune of being the victim to your dancing. Must you always bring that up? It was a long time ago. He looked so distressed that Catherine couldn't help but tease him further. I mourned the death of my little toe, sire. I liked that toe. It was a traumatic experience. Before long they were laughing like it was the most natural thing in the world. When did it change? Hadn't it always been like this? Catherine settled back into her own skin, mulling the confusion in her veins. Kath. She looked up at him. Her own emotions stung her. You can't keep running away from me. She sighed deeply. Her hands tightened around her resolve for lack of a solid thing to hold on to. Perhaps not, but I have already given you an answer. I am aware. I have tried to accept it. Please don't take offense, but I thought it would be easy. I left to clear my head, to fill my mind with other things. Traveling usually does the trick. For a while, at least, I thought I was successful. But even during my trip, I would catch myself thinking such absurd things like, I wonder what Kath will say when she sees that. No, I don't think Catherine will like this too much. Well, Kath used to say. It was funny, but also a little infuriating to know that you never left my mind. So I wish I knew how to do this. He sighed. I am too used to people leaving me that I do not know how to quit on my own. It must bother you, the amount of lovers I had in my past. I'm sorry for that. I almost wish I really was that adept. But, like I've told you, most were simply rumors. The rest were people realizing I'm not as interesting as they initially thought. Guillaume, they never stay long, Kath. One could say I'm amazing with first impressions. There's a nagging feeling that that's all I'm ever good for. A sort of exotic trophy that people like to collect for its sake, then put aside when its novelty expires. I can't blame them. By now I'm quite sure that I am what is wrong. I must be better at letting people go. But you... Please don't make me let go. You see through me, Kath. In your eyes I feel like I'm somebody worth loving. Is it any wonder I'd like to continue thinking of you fondly? Old habits die hard, I suppose. Catherine bit her lip. Those are impressive words, sire, but do you have a point? My point? It's simple, really. I don't think I'll be able to stop my feelings for you. You may reject me as many times as you wish. It will not change. I have already come to the conclusion that I don't mind. He shrugged. So I propose that you either get used to me chasing you, or you give in to my dashing, toe-mashing charms. Catherine chuckled despite herself. Or I could just kill you with the Duke's fashionable vase. Please do not give my superior the pleasure. I would rather you rip my heart out of my chest and offer as a dark sacrifice to the gods. Gory. Very poetic. Dashing points for you. You think so? I've been reading a lot of romance novels lately. What kind of romance novels are you even talking about? I figured I must learn to be more suave to make the lady of my dreams swoon. Is it working? Catherine laughed. Hardly. I believe this is how they do it in the big finale. Guillaume cleared his throat and knelt down on one knee. He took Catherine's hand awkwardly, trying to act as natural as he could. His serious face made Catherine burst out laughing. Que folle! What in the world are you doing, idiot? Stop laughing, madame. I must try this at least once. I'm simply concerned for an older gentleman and his knee. Will you be able to stand up in that position later, given your obvious grace? Guillaume chuckled. Terrible. Dare you call me an old man? I don't look my age, you know. Sure, sure. Oh, stop laughing, will you? I'm trying to concentrate. He cleared his throat again. Will Mademoiselle Catherine Perride allow me an audience tonight? As such, perhaps she might allow me to stay by her side for a while longer. It would make me a very happy man. It was sappy and ridiculous, and yet hearing the words did stir Catherine's heart. They were giggling like fools now, like children, her heart heavy with love for him. Love? Did she just think love? Of course she did. She'd always loved him. Why was she fighting her feelings again? The reason seemed unclear all of a sudden. All right, sire, your gallantry has convinced this lady to accept your offer for tonight. She bowed with an exaggerated curtsy. Guillaume took her hand theatrically as he stood up. This gentleman is relieved he didn't have to sing. A few rules for tonight. As we are in Paris, you must be on your best behavior. No embarrassing jokes like making friends with the street mimes. Agreed. As such, I must retire by 8. 10. 8. 9:30. 9. Take it or leave it. Guillaume grumbled, but Catherine just chuckled at his frustration. Fine. 9:15 it is. Sire, I meant 9 sharp. Guillaume's face brightened like a little boy's. Oh, I know where we can go. There's a quaint little piazza just south of here. They have a breathtaking view of the city. They're on a hill, you see. I know the owner personally, so we're already guaranteed the best seats. And they serve the best pomme de terre gratinée. I know I said the first part right, but I don't know about that. Also, pomme de terre, that's apples, right? Or is that... it's potatoes, I think. I think pomme is apple. Apple of the earth, so potato gratin. Fuck! French. Gratin again? If you continue eating that every opportunity you get, soon there'll be no potatoes left in all of France. Ah, yeah, potatoes! Catherine sighed. Why must he be so... This better not be a game like all your other flings, sire. I deserve to be treated like more than a prize. But Catherine watched Guillaume's face beam as he talked about the little house on the hill. How when the weather was perfect, the stars would soak the sky. She giggled to herself with fondness. What a dolt. A night in Paris and he would rather eat cheesed potatoes. It was just like him to pick the stars instead of the city, wasn't it? It pleased her to know that she adored the side of him that others didn't see. But was this the real him? Did she really see through him like he said? Or was this a face he put on for her sake, like most flirts could? If it was, then she'd been watching his face since she was a little girl. From awe to admiration, from friends to lovers. They had seen the best and worst of each other through the years. Surely there was something to that. Surely it couldn't all be a lie, right? I'm sorry, I got carried away. Shall we go? Yes. Catherine grabbed her coat and Guillaume took her purse. Oh, I almost forgot. Rose is waiting outside. Then let us hurry up and meet her. I haven't seen her for a long time. I missed her too. It will be a treat to spend the evening with 2 esteemed ladies. She'll be thrilled to see you. Just like old times, us 3. Yes. She slipped her hand on his arm nonchalantly and caught Guillaume's smile to himself. At the very least, let that smile be real. You're lying! Lady Claudette saw you in Nimes. Tears and snot ran down her face. She was holding a vintage 1610 bottle of wine. She gripped the neck of the bottle and flung it at the wall where Guillaume was standing. He ducked it just in time to avoid the glass. Chérie! Don't you chérie me, you bastard! Can we not take it out on my wine collection again? Catherine threw another bottle in response. Stop, Catherine, you're going to hurt yourself. Hurt myself? Like you care! You tell me you're off to Avignon last week, but you're actually in Nimes? Why are you making this into a huge deal? So I had a stopover at a neighboring town. It was not... It's a lie if you omit things. I told you at the very start of this relationship, Guillem, I want 100% honesty from you. And I've told you as well. I have a reputation. Rumors follow me. Idle mouths can't help but chatter. Did you know that Lady Claudette once indecently proposed to me? And right in her husband's birthday gathering as well. So what? That is all beside the point. You know what they say, where there's smoke there's fire. How about a name to further torch the bush? Lelaine de Montclair? Lelaine is the shop girl of the town, a nice girl. Or at least I surmise from all those 3 times I made the mistake to enter her shop, it looks like. Is there anything else you would like to insinuate? Oh, nothing at all, sire. Why? Is there anything I should know? Guillem sighed and tried to speak calmly. Surely I promised you when we got engaged, didn't I? I will be faithful to only you. There is no one else. But Catherine gritted her teeth. Again with this! You are more vague than a monkey's spit. Answer me straight. Answer me straight right now, yes or no. Are you having an affair? Guillem threw his hands up in annoyance. Merde, Catherine, I'm not. I've already answered this. Why does it seem like you only hear what you want to hear? I just want to understand everything and make it crystal clear. Is that so bad? Now explain to me what Lady Claudette... Lady Claudette? You are taking that bitter, conniving woman's words over mine? Hm. Well, I try to get information from the source, but the source isn't very reliable. Guillem's shoulders slumped in an irritated surrender. She heard him curse under his breath. I'm tired of this, Kath. This is a waste of time. What is the point of this if we keep going around in circles? Catherine snuffled, wiping her nose savagely with her hand. You always do this. You go off on a tangent and pick things apart. You don't even listen to my side at all. Could you stop acting like a child for 1 minute? Maybe then we can have a real conversation. A conversation with a liar is always one-sided. Catherine grabbed 2 bottles this time. What would happen if she brought the 2 bottles crashing in front of her? Would the pieces of glass stab her face? Her eyes, maybe? What a random thought. The morbid picture gave her an out-of-body experience. It was a nasty fight, depressingly familiar, but they were dancing the same tune once again. Here be the lovers. Enter left the hothead. Watch her dance with anger blazing, tears are sparkling bitter rage. The fight goes on until she's spent, the reasons hazy in her head. Pan right, the rake. Both the victim and the accused. Words are poison or an unlit fuse. Migraines taunt his pride and temper, he grudgingly takes on logic's mantle. The words they throw reach fever pitch. The dance will crest, he'll choose to leave. Enough of this, he says in rage. Temper rising, he exits frame. Her unspent fervor burning hot. She cries it off. That cowardly sod! What did you expect? She asks herself. He'll take abuse with a bowed head? The least he could do, her anger shouts. A hint of guilt, a hint of doubt. The migraine throbs as he is pacing, annoyed and anger, his face flushed. Capricious woman, irrational! He shakes his head with a tired breath. Yet he basks in torture and savors the taste. This is love, he nods. This is love, he says. Love and pain go hand in hand. It is painful, yes, but never bland. He nips a morsel and takes a bite. Exquisite, he trembles. A rush, a charge. He feels his heart is struck by love. Decides that it is worth the gripe. A dainty flower he must protect, to watch it bloom until it's ripe. But not right now, he says, still sore. His pride's too hard to swallow whole. Hours pass, he wouldn't call. She forms the words she knows will hurt. She plans to cut and make him bleed. Yet when he arrives, she all but weeps. Why'd you leave? I shouldn't have. Are you angry still? I'm here now, love. Her arms are snug upon his neck. He'll promise to change, to do its best. For both their sakes, he admits he's wrong. A little lie to complete the song. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you, love. Just tell me when you're tired of me or when you find some other pretty thing, you bastard. Catherine slipped back into her brain just as the last sentence left her lips. If you're going to leave me, then just leave. Stop playing me for a fool. This was a new tempo. She dropped the bottles at her side but did not let go. He noticed the change of song and timed his step accordingly. I never once thought or treated you like a fool. I love you. I'm never going to leave you. New tears churn and bubble from her eyes. Liar. It was her turn to leave this time, and she did. He was left to perform a solo. Contemplation, regret, penance. A vow of new beginnings forming in his head. Kath? Rosie Wosie! Catherine stumbled into Rosa's room that evening, drunk to high heaven. Her half-lidded eyes surveyed Rosa's meager space. She let herself fall on the bed, regretting it instantly. The ceiling spun in a waltz of throbbing headaches and acid-laced throats. Bad idea. Catherine stood up and her wobbly legs tripped her. Rosa caught her and sat Kath on her small bed. My goodness, you stink of alcohol. She propped some pillows behind her back and fixed the stray hairs that had littered her face. Thanks, hon, you're a dear. How much have you had, Kath? Catherine counted on her fingers. Never mind. Would you like some water? Nope. Interesting. Huh? I can almost hear liquids sloshing around in my brain when I shake my head. Rosa pursed her lips. Catherine was in no shape to make decisions right now. She stood up to get her something to sober up. But Catherine grabbed Rosa's hand and tugged at it gently. No, you sit. Please? Rosa complied. Catherine revealed a bottle about 3/4 full. Snuck another from the Gilly Monster's closet. Serves him right for calling me a child. Rosa began to protest. Catherine paid her no mind. Come on, Rosa! When have we ever drunk ourselves to the point of insanity? And I call you my best friend. Catherine took a huge swig of the bittersweet liquid and offered it to Rosa. Rosa examined it carefully and took a mouthful. She gargled it in her mouth, admiring the sweet and sour flavor of the wine. I've never had anything this rich before. Good, right? It had to be. It's the last bottle. So, had another fight with Shush! Bad wind follows that name. I'm not talking about that egocentric pompadour tonight. We are going to drink. We are going to reminisce, and tomorrow we'll hate ourselves together. Agreed? Rosa giggled. If you say so. All right, last one. Rosa puffed her cheeks in mock disgust. Fine. How do you make holy water? How? Boil the hell out of it. Rosa and Catherine were assaulted by fits of hysteric laughter. Catherine felt the muscles of her cheeks ache. That is so bad, I don't even have the words. Catherine wiped the tears of laughter from her eyes. I heard that from one of your suitors, Sire Adrian. Rosa rolled her eyes. How come I always end up talking to your suitors more than you? I must start charging you a fee. I'll pay it with my gratitude. What is wrong with Sire Adrian anyway? He seems like a nice man. Nice hair, nice teeth, nicely groomed mutton chops. The women laughed. How about Sire Ferran? He sent you that lovely bouquet of flowers. I'm not interested in a relationship at the moment. At the moment? You don't seem interested ever. I am. Sometimes. It's just hard to connect to people for me beyond physical. Relationships seem out of the question. You don't have any difficulty with me or that idiot in the upper room. It means you're not incapable. That's only because you're my closest friends. Well, there must be someone. Oh, you're so picky. If you go on like that, you might end up an old maid. So be it. I'd rather take care of your children anyway. I shall be the amazing godmother. Catherine smiled wistfully. I'm not sure I want any. What? Children. I love children, but it's a little scary. Catherine bit her lip. What if she becomes her own mother? It was such a terrifying possibility, wasn't it? She barely remembered her mother. Her malady had struck as soon as Catherine was born. She had never called Catherine by her name, not even on the day she had died. All she knew was that her family struggled with that crisis. Her father exhausted and depressed, and her sister forced to grow up too fast. To be a blight to the people you love, how horrible would it be? Catherine. Rosa smiled at her, interrupting her thoughts. You will be a good mother. Your past does not matter. Catherine stared at Rosa, almost enchanted by her ability to know what she was thinking. She really was her best friend, wasn't she? The thought warmed her heart. You really think so? Yes. The fact that you're so concerned about them before they're even born speaks much of your kindness. Whatever happens, those children will grow up loved. Catherine blushed and changed the subject. Oh, we're out of booze. We finished it. I'm quite buzzed. Hey, remember the first time we drank? Do you mean the party or the potato incident? Of course I mean the potato incident. Oh, how can I forget? Rosa burst out laughing. That was hilarious. Wench, stop laughing. I almost went to jail. Goodness, I was so stupid. Rosa laughed again. Amen. Hey, you're supposed to say, no, Catherine, we do dumb things when we're young. Catherine, we do dumb things when we're young. It's about time you learn your lesson. I can't wait to tell your children endless tales of your shenanigans. Wench! Tut tut. Catherine grabbed Rosa's waist in an attempt to tickle her, but Rosa slipped away, laughing. Catherine's stomach lurched and she stopped, her hands still hugging Rosa's waist. The room spun, but it wasn't unpleasant. She felt like being gently rocked in a cradle. She closed her eyes and smiled. She took in Rosa's scent, always smelling slightly like apples. Rosa scratched her head and smoothed her hair. This is nice. Yes. Rosa? Thank you for being with me. Of course. No, I mean... She sat up on the bed. You've been with me all my life. You're my oldest friend. When we first met, I didn't have many friends. I just studied my piano lessons night and day because that's all I ever knew how to do. It was all I had. Maybe that was why I begged Papa to let you stay with us. I was so happy. Rosa smiled fondly at the memory. You were there for me, always. Oh, that sounds disgustingly melodramatic. You're drunk, I understand. They laughed again. Would you like to hear something worse? What? You changed my life. Ugh, that is worse. Rosa smiled fondly as she played with Catherine's hair. I'm the lucky one, Catherine. You took me home and treated me like I was family. I wouldn't have known what a real family was like without you, Papa Francois, and Emily. Even if Papa Francois always did avoid me, I knew he cared for me like his own. Yes, why is that? That was why I liked him. He was a good man. And you know, Guillaume was almost family too. Catherine made a face at the mention of the man, but her eyes softened. I miss my father. Me too. There was a pause. Catherine shifted awkwardly in her skin. Can I tell you a secret? Of course. Guillaume and I, we haven't had intercourse. Recently? No, I mean, at all. Oh. Rosa cleared her throat. I see. After all these years? Well, after the first time, never again. Rosa blushed. Her head knitted together images of the two people she considered her friends. Rosa tried to push them away, but all she was able to do was paint the warped fantasies in gossamer and fuzz. She cleared her throat. Is that why you have separate rooms even when we moved here to the chateau? No, that was his idea. He's very peculiar with his sleep. I imagine we'll be keeping the separate bedrooms even when we get married. I don't really mind. Well, your wedding is soon, isn't it? Perhaps you're just nervous. No, I don't think it's like that. Recently we'd get intimate, but I always stopped when things got too sultry. Oh. He gets upset sometimes, but he says it's all right. Catherine looked down ruefully on her toes. He doesn't push me into it. I should be glad. But don't you think it's strange? What if I stay like this even after we get married? I don't understand why. Sometimes I get these doubts, and I wonder why they're there. Isn't that unfair for him? I just feel like there's something wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you. But it makes me really insecure. This lack of, what if he's getting it somewhere else? It drives me crazy. And believe me, I want to. I just can't for some reason. I get this horrible feeling I can't explain. Rosa examined Catherine's face and came to a conclusion. It took me a while to understand sex. The sudden no-nonsense comment surprised Catherine. Rosa went on. I was the same as you. I had always had an averse feeling for it, like it's dirty and I should be ashamed for enjoying it. I had always thought love would make sex clean, but that's not how it works. They're two separate things. So just because you don't like sex, it doesn't mean you don't love him, Kath. Catherine looked up at her. Why do you even care so much to hurt him? What do you think love is? The warm feeling returned to Catherine's heart. How do you do that? Huh? You always know the right thing to say. Always. Rosa blushed at this, suddenly aware that they were still in a loose tangle of an embrace. I've read a lot of smart books lately. She tried to diffuse the situation with a laugh, but Catherine didn't drop her look. Candlelight played pretty shadows on her skin. It illuminated the glint in her eyes, the moist on her lips. Rosa felt the warmth of the alcohol rise up to her face. Her heartbeat increased steadily. Anyway, maybe you'll feel better about it when you're married. You're probably just nervous about the whole thing." She made attempts to curl away from Catherine's arms. Slowly, subtly run away. Disperse the proximity. But she couldn't run away from her stare. Catherine's hand caressed Rosa's face. She touched her scars daintily, tracing them with her fingers. "You're really pretty, Rosa. Especially when you smile." "Thank you, I think." "You don't believe me." I don't think I am. I look in the mirror and I see a freak." "Rosa! That's not true. It's fine. I liked being a freak. I wanted to be ugly. I used to bind my breasts and hide in the shabbiest clothes I could find." Rosa touched her eye. This was penance, she remembered herself saying, for being a sinner and a freak, for attracting attention and spite, for dressing nicely, for letting her hair grow long. But really, I did this to myself to hide. To hide? Rosa's mouth quivered. "I thought people don't touch ugly things. But the truth is they do. So what I'd rather be is invisible." Catherine wrapped her arms around Rosa's neck. She heard Catherine sniff and wipe tears behind her embrace. She pushed Rosa's hair away and kissed her defective eye. "You're not a freak, and you're not ugly. I love every part of you. They're all beautiful." Rosa forgot how close they were now, forgot Catherine's hand on her own. Here was somebody who accepted her with all her faults and ugliness. You always made me feel like I'm worth something. Because you are. You're beautiful, Rosa, inside and out." Rosa saw her face reflected in Catherine's eyes. In them she did indeed look beautiful. A lump formed in Rosa's throat. Catherine's face hovered above her cheek. She planted a little seed of a kiss on it, just barely away from her lips. Rosa kissed her nose in return. It made Catherine giggle. At first, the kisses were sweet, innocent. The kind of punch-drunk kisses that sent them both into bouts of giggling. But Catherine's hand caressed her neck. The kisses lingered. Lips melded. Hands explored. And Rosa sucked on Catherine's tongue inside her mouth. Wine. Candle wax. Spit. That was what it tasted like. Rosa's head began to swoon. Catherine's hand squeezed her right breast. Tripe. Grapes. Plush. Rosa began to taste more of her. Longing. Regrets. Tears. A sensational flavor she had never tasted before hovered at the edge of her tongue. Suddenly she was hungry for it. Take it all. Rosa savored the taste. She breathed deeply. All mine. Child! I want it. Her heart. I want her heart. Her love is sweet. Listen to my voice. Mother? But I'm so hungry. So hungry. Stop! Rosa flung her eyes open. A sinking feeling of menace overcame her. No! Rosa pulled away. She pushed Catherine away from her face. Catherine's eyes snapped open, startled by Rosa's outburst. Why did you stop? Greedy, selfish bitch! She blinked for a few seconds. A look of horror creeped on her face. I'm sorry. I didn't mean... No, Kath... Rose couldn't stand the hurt in her eyes. She was probably blaming herself. Rosa wanted to shout how wrong she was, but the lump in her throat became a rapacious mouth. A tumor had grown inside of her, a parasite. She could feel it pulse and slither inside her neck. She couldn't speak at all. Catherine wobbled off the bed. She wiped her mouth and cheeks, which were covered in a thin layer of drool. I'm so sorry, Rosa. I'm gonna leave now. Kath. Good night. Rosa should have followed her, but when she tried to stand, the floor twirled. She choked at the flavor left in her throat. Sick and cloying, sticky sweet like honey. The taste both repulsed and enticed her. Thick spit leaked out of her mouth. She felt the urge to vomit. This is nothing, Mother. Just a bad after effect of alcohol. No. Please, don't call me that. It was an accident. Everything is fine. She would talk to Catherine tomorrow, assure her that this was not her fault. Everything was fine. There was an urgent knock at Guillem's door. The clock read 2:15 in the morning. Hello? He closed his journal and stood up from his desk. Yes, coming. He opened his door. Catherine stood in front of him, her cheeks stained with hastily wiped tears. Kath? Guillem, can we talk? Oh, isn't it quite late? Please, it's urgent. All right. Guillem led her inside. Lady, you smell like my vintage bottle of Bourgogne. Did you get so drunk you actually thought of apologizing first? I didn't think I'd see the day. Sherry, what's wrong? Catherine's thumb went to her mouth without thinking. How could she even begin to tell Guillem what she had done? Honey, I was really upset with you today. So despite any good sense, I went and got myself drunk. This time I dragged Rosa along with me. Things have a tendency to go out of hand when alcohol is involved, as you know. Long story short, I came on to Rosa. You know, Rosa, the girl who's almost like my sister. Yes, I may have forced myself on her. And I did that right after she told me she had been abused before. She felt Guillem's hand take her thumb away from her mouth. Kath. She looked at her fingers in horror. Her habit had surfaced again. She thought she had gotten rid of this as she grew up, replacing the nail biting with a meticulous, almost obsessive care for her fingers. My fingers are my livelihood. I must take care of them. Now the nails were chewed down to jagged stumps, and a couple of them had tiny, blistering cuts. Kath, can you talk? Catherine's eyes snapped back to Guillem, as if he had just materialized in the room beside her. So yes, like I was saying, darling, which is the worst thing, what do you think? This implied incest, my abuse of my best friend, or my infidelity to you? Or if that doesn't cut it, dear, may I divulge you one last point? I felt something worrying when I kissed her. Excitement. If she hadn't stopped me, something else would have... It felt so real. It didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like it had always been there, buried deeply. So much that it felt like cheating. It was like a craving. I wanted it. It was something I haven't felt with you when we... Why is this happening? I don't know. I don't even know who I am anymore. Kath, you're scaring me. Tell me what's wrong. Would you still want to marry me? Would you still love me if you knew? I wouldn't. I can't even look at myself in the mirror. But I think I know who I am now. I'm a selfish, depraved bitch. I have always been the controlling, jealous lover to you. And just one night of drunken frenzy, I went and took advantage of two people I care for the most. Not enough wine to justify this. I want to call off the engagement. At first, Catherine saw that Guillem treated it as a joke, but the panic in his eyes set in immediately. What? I said I'm calling off the engagement. Well, I refuse. You don't have a choice. I'm leaving tomorrow. No. Not until you tell me what's wrong. Guillem's eyes didn't flinch. Those were the looks he gave her that melted her heart. They were so sure and steadfast in their care. They were fighting just this morning, a fight she had started as usual. Yet there was no doubt in his eyes at all. If she were to see that certainty fade away from his eyes, she knew it would break her. Is it about the fight earlier? Because, Kath, I swear to you, I haven't done any of that. No, stop. Hearing him reinstate his devotion to her just made it more painful. Tears pooled in her eyes and fell in huge, ugly globs. She'd been doing so well, too. She thought she could hold it in until she left. She wiped the tears as best she could, but more kept pouring out. It isn't about that. Then what is it? What do you want me to do? Whatever it is, I shall do it. This was so hard. Why did this have to be so hard? Why did she even go here? Because she wanted to see his face. She wondered what it would be like for a cheater to go back to the arms of her lover. Would it change somehow? Did she still love him? How could she even tell? All her emotions were wrapped in a thick layer of guilt. It was hard to distinguish every painful thought. She'd started to sob now, yes indeed. Ugly, unflattering snorts came out of her nose. It felt comforting to hold on to guilt. Its existence made the hatred towards herself bite less. Kath, please tell me what's bothering you. I don't deserve you. I'm a horrible person. You ought to find someone else to marry. Catherine let the words tumble out of her mouth, slightly relieved to be rid of them. She looked tearfully up at Guillem to gauge his reaction, but he just stared back at her blankly. Why wouldn't he say anything? Catherine sobbed, fearing the worst. Guillem cleared his throat and spoke hesitantly. Could you, repeat that? He cupped his hand to his ear and angled it closer to her face. He apparently hadn't caught any of her heartfelt words. Catherine snarled angrily at him. "You idiots! I'm having a breakdown here!" But I didn't understand what you said." "I said you ought to find someone else because I'm a horrible person." Guillem pulled her to him. "Oh, that's it. Whatever made you think that I'll accept that reason?" Catherine's tears soaked his shirt. "You don't know what I've done." "Then tell me." "You'll hate me, I guarantee it." "Did you punch a baby?" "No." The inside joke made her laugh out of the blue. She buried her face in his chest in a half sob, half laugh. Suddenly her doubts were cleared. Suddenly she didn't want to marry anyone else. Catherine's arms tightened around Guillem's waist. "I've been taking you for granted, haven't I? I've been arrogant, expecting you to always adjust to me and my whims." A new fervor sprung out of her love for him. "I don't deserve you right now, but I'll work on that if you give me another chance." First, she would tell him what she had done. Then it would be up to him if he still wanted her. He deserved that decision. "What I did," but Guillem stopped her with a kiss on her forehead. "Tomorrow, after a hearty breakfast and a good night's rest. I'll listen to what you have to say, though I'm quite sure my answer will be the same." Catherine's face melted into a smile and he beamed at her. "My star finally smiles." Catherine wiped her eyes. "I love you so much." She sighed with content, part of her anxiety put to rest. "I do. I really do." She whispered that last one under her breath, as if trying to console herself. "Guillem." "Yes, dear?" "Will you make love to me?" Guillem's brows shot up in surprise. "Right now?" "Yes." "No. Well, if you're not ready, later is also fine. Or tomorrow. But since it's already morning, then technically it's today, right?" Guillem's head tilted slightly, an amused smirk plastered on his face. "Please take me seriously, Guillem. This is important to me. I have to know. I have to make sure." "Make sure of what?" "Catherine." Guillem held her hand. "I think you're tired. And just a little barmy. More than usual, I mean. But this is what we'll do." Guillem guided the woman to the bed and sat her down. "We're going to lay on the bed, and I'm going to pat your hair until you fall asleep. I shall skip work today, have that trifling little talk you want. And as such, if you're still in the love-making type of mood, then, mademoiselle, I will take you up on your offer." Catherine's eyes moistened, but this time they were happy tears. "I love you." Guillem shrugged and lifted Catherine's leg up onto the bed. "I love you too, and aren't you lucky? Save it!" He climbed on the bed beside her. Catherine draped her arm over him. He searched for her hand, brought it up to his lips, and patted it. She closed her eyes and rested her head on his chest, comforted by the warmth of his embrace. "Monsieur, can I ask you something?" "Hmm?" "Why do you love me so much?" Guillem mused for a while. "Is that a trick question? It feels like a trick question." Catherine whined. "All right, I shall humor you for now because you're in such a pathetic state. I love you simply because it's easy to love you, darling. You're my star, my light. You keep me right, always. You make me want to do good by you, to be a better person. You aren't even my wife yet, but the townspeople are already calling you their lady. I may have to hand you the marquisdom myself. That's only because everyone in town knows who I am. Oh, I wonder why that is. Is it because you help sell vegetables in the marketplace on weekends? Or because you conspire with my cooks to hold impromptu picnics with the locals? You know about that? One can only sneak out so much food without... One can only sneak out that much food without getting noticed, madame. It amuses me how the servants cover for you upon inquiry as well. It was my idea. They're not to blame. I know, darling. I know." Guillem chuckled and kissed her temple. "It goes to show how your presence uplifts everyone's lives, including mine. But honestly, those reasons aren't exactly why. I love you, Kath. I just do, beyond what I thought I was capable of." Catherine's heart cracked with his last utterance. "If I did something bad, would you still love me?" "Yes, I would." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." "What if I've hurt an innocent person? What if I've hurt you?" She bit her lip. "What if I was unfaithful?" Guillem stared at her questioningly. Catherine buried her face in his chest. She felt his hand smooth away her hair. He whispered gently into her ear. If you would still have me, come back to me. Shoo. What happened doesn't matter at all. You're not your mistakes, Kath. Golem cleared his throat. Suddenly he seemed to have trouble breathing. You have the power to change. How about you? If I told you that I'm not what I say I am, would you... Hmm? What do you mean? Never mind. It's a silly question. What? Is something bothering you, Shu? Golem turned his head away and closed his eyes. Nothing, darling. We should sleep now. Catherine patted away the frown on his brow. She traced his cheeks with her fingers. Golem, I do love you. Now I'm more than certain. It gives my heart happiness to know for sure. It reminded me it was your generosity. You give every bit of yourself to the people you love. Do you know that? Because I have to, darling. Well, you've always inspired me, Shu. I have always looked up to you. You treat everyone, no matter their status, with kindness. Never have I met a man more generous and thoughtful about others. A man with so much love to give. And that is why I love you. You're a good man. But if that's not what I really am? Catherine shook her head. You can't fake sacrifice, Monsieur. I've seen you care for the people in this town. I've seen how you've loved me. I don't care much for your intention, you see. It's what we actually do that defines us. Golem paused, his voice choked up in his throat. Not always. Not always. Golem found Catherine's hand on his face and squeezed it. She stretched her neck and kissed his cheek. Catherine, you're always scared I'll leave you. But the truth is, I know it's you who will leave me. And it hurts. What? You're different. I've loved you for so long. It scares me how deep I've rooted myself. Sometimes I deem it better to end this wretched existence. To save you from... What are you talking about, Golem? You're not making any sense. Is it your turn to scare me? I'm sorry. They didn't speak for a while. The air became a little uncomfortable. She could feel Golem's stressful breathing on her forehead. Catherine wondered what Golem was talking about, but it didn't seem like he wanted to discuss it further. When Golem started to calm down, Catherine thought it was best to sleep and ask him about it the next day. But Golem spoke again. His voice was low and serious. Catherine, do you love me? With all my heart, Golem. I've loved you for what seems like my whole life. The candle flickered. Golem slipped his hands on Catherine's hair and gently pushed her face towards his. She closed her eyes and let the sensations of his lips take her. His mouth left sweet traces on her skin, as if washing away her sins, blessing her, anointing her. Catherine tasted salt in his kiss, like the taste of tears. She wanted to take away all his sorrows. Golem held her tightly, longingly. She drowned herself in his embrace. His palm caressed her neck as he kissed her, sliding down her arm in the curve of her waist. His fingers tugged gently on her skin. Catherine darted her tongue inside his mouth, and Golem answered it with his own. She wanted his every kiss. She felt pleasure to know he was hers. Her hand ran up and down his back as their kisses grew heavier. She felt him get excited, and she moved her hand between his legs. Golem broke away. Kath, let's stop. You're tired. Catherine looked into his eyes and saw he wanted her despite his protests. After the events of that night, there was a despair in Catherine that longed to be quenched. It was a selfish atonement, perhaps, a hunger for self-worth. She ran her tongue over his lips. I want this. Kath. Catherine straddled him, dipping her head and plunging her tongue deep into his mouth. She opened his shirt, nibbling on his ear as she did. She could feel his manhood alive on her thigh. This is awkward to read. She moved her hips, a distraught moan left his throat. She bit her lip coyly. It made her want to do more. The clench of his jaw, his aroused breath, the cord of his neck. They were her little trophies, her bliss. Catherine pulled his shirt free. She traced a finger down his bare stomach, keeping the rhythm on her hips. He opened his mouth, his eyes fluttering. She watched in ecstasy as he bit his lip. To know that he couldn't resist her made her swell with pride. Golem grinded with her. He began to answer her passion with his own energy. Golem sat up on the bed, finally reaching for her, finally giving in. It felt like a victory to her. Golem grabbed her neck and pulled her face to him. His tongue bored deeply into her. Catherine pulled on his hair, surprised at his sudden intensity. Heat ran through her body. She savored his dominance. His lips ran down her neck to her chest. He sucked on her collarbone while working on the buttons to her blouse. He slipped the garment down with his teeth and kissed the bare skin experimentally. Every nerve felt tender. Every length of skin felt raw. It was a reminder, an awareness that her flesh was a living thing. There was a buildup of tension as he squeezed her breast, planting soft, tiny kisses on its fullness. His hands hovered near her crotch. A stray finger would brush her sensitive spots, almost innocently. It drove her mad. He was teasing her, studying her reactions with every touch. Catherine drew a sharp breath as Guillem sucked on her nipple. Boy, this is getting awkward. His tongue played with it until it was hard and pert. Catherine felt like a melting candle, hot and ablaze, dripping, thawing in her own heat. I just realized the window to my living room is open. May any neighbors that hear me forgive me, for I have sinned. Her heart began to pace in time with their kisses, growing steadily heavier, beating louder. From sweet affection to wanton lust. He whispered her name, and it sent a violent tremor throughout her skin. It would start in her torso, surging through her, startling the roots of her hair. Her throat made short, hurt sounds. She would usually stop here. An irksome apathy would take hold of her, and she would stop. Now. Oh boy, whoever just joined at a great time. This wasn't like the other times. Catherine felt a hot throbbing at the pit of her stomach. A clench in her body wound her up tighter and tighter, putting her in danger of release. This was different. This was... Do you love me, Catherine? Guillem, Her voice came out throaty and thick. Guillem laid her down on the bed. His fingers slipped easily inside of her, the sensation smooth like silk. She felt him... I swear this whole thing isn't smutty, but this one part... She felt him moving around inside, pressing on her walls experimentally. It didn't take long for him to find her weakness. He was surprisingly, worryingly adept. Catherine squirmed. She didn't have time to marvel at his expertise. His left hand massaged her breasts, while the other tickled the lips of her opening. His little finger petted the other hole. Aw, come on. Don't, like, tittle her butthole. Guillem's lips ran down her shoulder. She barely noticed him slipping another finger inside. When she did, her mind went white for a few seconds. A sharp breath, and then a sigh. Her hips were moving on their own while their tongues flickered and danced. Another heart that seemed... Wow, I can't read anything. The person left. Sorry. Another heart seemed to beat and throb furiously in her groin. She felt for him. She found his shaft stiff under his trousers. Oh man, are we gonna go in like every explicit detail of him fucking her? She squeezed his stiffness, eager for its girth. Cloth against flesh, soft against hard. Lips and teeth, spit and sweat. Their bodies began to rock together. Their breaths were hot and audible. Guillem dug his tongue on the hollow of her neck. Catherine whined. The soft sounds returned to her lips, but Guillem covered them with his mouth. Her voice echoed in their heads. She wanted to scream, and the scream would come from very deep. Do you love me? Oh God, I love you, she said in an urgent, desperate frenzy. In and out his fingers went, each time touching her places. With every movement he seemed to steal her breath. Faster now. Then she twitched and something snapped inside her. Her toes curled and a squeal escaped through her nose. Catherine opened her eyes. She caught something alarming as she stared up at him. He didn't look like Guillem in the shadows unlicked by candlelight. His features were the same. His eyes were in the same place. His nose and lips were the same shape. But this man was a stranger. He did not care for her like how a snake didn't care for its prey. For a brief second she was afraid. A tiny voice told her to run away, but that voice was washed away by a wave of carnal desire. The stranger grinned at Catherine. Mine. Faster now, deeper his kisses went, as if reaching for something inside her. His weight on her body excited her, but also felt like a prison. Run, rabbit! Run, rabbit, run! Catherine viciously devoured his lips. Her hands cruised south, kneading and clutching greedily. Her legs were draped around his waist. A force overtook her, a hunger. Here comes the farmer's gun! She tried to ignore the growing coldness in Guillem's eyes. She tried to ignore the way her body moved on its own. Run, rabbit! Run, rabbit, run! Her hands found the clasps of his trousers, and she undid them. Quickly now, quickly. She clutched his hardness, moving her hand up and down. Catherine's mouth salivated. He bit on her shoulder. She felt more of his teeth than his lips on her body. Catherine scolded herself for being aroused. Her mounting terror only served to aggravate her urges. She wanted this. I want this. She was hungry. I am hungry. She heard the man snicker. He wants his farmer's pie. So don't stand idly by. Run, rabbit, run. He entered her without warning. Catherine gasped. I'd have more of a gasp, okay? I've had sex, and nah. The shiver was from both pleasure and fear, a dangerous mix, but it was cruel. There was no warmth, just cold, hard greed. And yet she couldn't help but want him. She pushed her hips to move with him. She wanted to please him. Slowly at first, savoring the warmth of his new territory. Sorry, I'm stretching. Ugh. Then faster, keeping a steady pace. Catherine's voice kept in time. Her breaths were high and hot. With their every movement, Catherine felt her energy wither away. A heady, nauseous feeling of malady was clawing at her. Oh, fuck, I didn't even know you could do that. What did I do? Okay, there we go. I accidentally hit the mouse wheel. What was missing? What was taken away? She didn't know what was gone until it was. The final scream of protest died in her mind, the last what was left of her lucidity. The urge to escape left. No more reasons to stop. Catherine moaned. Stop? No, I must not stop. Why did I even think that? What if he'd hate her? It was an agonizing thought. She had to give him more. More. His eyes observed her with cold amusement. Catherine touched his chest in reverence. His eyes were cold, but his body was like fire. Oh, I get it. Took me a second to understand the visual. In her mind's eye, he had started to become something else. A winged creature engulfed in flame, both hot and cold and magnificent. Both beautiful and terrible. Both dark and light. At times she'd be on the bed with a man she might remember as one she'd once loved. Other times she would be floating, suspended on a dark chasm of flesh. There was a creature with her, somebody she both loathed and adored. Sometimes there were two people. Sometimes there was only him. Only him. The woman called Catherine didn't exist. She was merely an extension of his mind. Soon all of her would be gone, little by little disintegrating to be a part of him forever. Catherine screamed. She came again with that thought. Oh, bliss! She was prepared to give everything to him. It didn't even seem a worthy sacrifice to lay at his feet. But no, all he asked for was her heart, that small, pathetic thing. It had always been his anyway. She gave it gleefully. He was so generous and considerate, benevolent, fair. She savored his fullness inside her body. She worshipped him. He was her god. Please want me. Please find me pretty. She craved his love above anything else, above fear and confusion, above the mourning at something precious lost. Love me, please. Love me, she begged. I'll do anything for you. Anything? His lips did not move, save for a smile. The words simply dropped in her head, echoed, and took root. Catherine's eyes lost their glimmer. Anything. Then tell me again. I want to hear it. Do you love me, Catherine? Her name on his lips was the only reminder of her former self. I do. I love you. I love you so much. With these words, she felt him stiffen inside her. He moved faster, aroused by her devotion to him. A wave of fire burnt her lips as their mouths entwined. His passion heightened, his back arched. Sweat beaded on his forehead and traced his temple. What a wondrous sight. He was ice beginning to thaw, a sun on the verge of eclipse, his coldness replaced by a radiating heat that melded and fastened her to him like fire with metal. She felt another orgasm threaten her insides. Really? Do you really love me? Yes, she screamed. Yes. The candle fizzled out. Beneath the depths of her hazy mind, she was relieved she didn't have to look at his face. She tastes just like the richest chocolate, the finest wine. I can't stop. My whole body shivers with the taste of her. Her breath on my neck, her fingers scratching at my back, the sounds she makes as I push into her. Her lust gives me sustenance to move faster, to devour her faster. Stop. I knew waiting so long would be worth it. I've been her lover for years, and this flavor is divine. My head spins, my appetite swells. I can't stop. I bind her hands into a tight grip, pushing them above her head. Her legs squeeze my waist. I can feel her excitement mounting with her helplessness. I lick my lips in delight. I haven't breathed so deeply for a long time. You're taking too much. Her love is exquisite. It is laced with anger, reverence, disappointment, pain, memories. All different relishes and morsels melding into one. Stop it! Her love is a delicacy. You're destroying her! I can't stop myself. I haven't tasted this kind of love for so long. Flirtations and physical limitation can only get me by for so long. I was going to wait. There's a waning in her love. Confusion, doubt? But that helping of guilt tinged the flavor perfectly. I must feed now. Her love is the most perfect tonight. My body wants her. I couldn't stop now even if I wanted to. Liar. And I almost let you escape. To save her. I almost ran away. I love her. I love her. And tomorrow? Maybe. What will become of her? I will find another. Next time. Something insignificant. I want to relish this taste a bit more. No! No! The mounting pleasure in my bones clamps on my groin. The numbness spreads to my stomach. It's almost painful. It goads me to increase my rhythm, and she follows my lead. Good girl. Good girl. With every move I feel her osmose into my other mouth. She clings to me, her moans louder. Her bare chest glistens with sweat. She's beautiful. It won't be long now. A final drawing of breath. Do you love me, Catherine? Give me all your love. All of it. Give it to me. I want it all. It's mine. Mine. Catherine, give me more. I want more. 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 Rosa stood in front of the door to Catherine's room, her hand raised to knock, but she didn't move. Doubt was creeping into her mind like a spider crawling on a wall. She remembered the feeling of hunger from the night they had kissed. It was both familiar and utterly alien, like an instinct, an urge she hadn't felt for a long time. A shiver ran down her spine at the memory. She's avoiding me, isn't she? She hadn't seen Catherine for a few days since that night. She'd been spending a lot of her time alone, locked away in her room. Whenever Rosa saw her in the chateau, she would excuse herself and leave. Rosa never got the courage to push the issue. But days had passed, and Catherine's behavior began to worry her even more. What did you expect? After what you did to her, you little monster, of course she'll avoid you like the plague. No matter. She's never going to love you like Mother does. Like all the others, she's going to leave you, and in the end, and then you're alone. Only Mother will stay with you forever and love you. So be a good child and listen to what I tell you. Rosa bit her lower lip. This was all her fault, wasn't it? She needed to make it right. If Rosa talked to her properly, she was sure they would come to an understanding. She had to explain to her. What exactly? They both had been drunk, and the kisses didn't mean anything? Her stomach churned at this thought. In the end, it didn't matter what Rosa wanted. Catherine obviously regretted what had happened. She didn't want to lose her friend because of too much wine. Rosa gently knocked on Catherine's door. Catherine, may I come in? Please, Catherine, I'm sorry for the mess, but can we talk? Rosa waited for an answer. None came. Rosa turned the handle slowly and entered. Usually Catherine's room was brightly lit. The windows let in a fresh breeze, often carrying the sweet smell of flowers in spring. Right now, however, the curtains were drawn close. The few candles burning on a desk weren't enough to banish the darkness completely. The air hung heavy in the room. Catherine didn't turn around when the door opened. She just stood there, unmoving, in front of a wall. The sound of something scratching along a rough surface filled the air. Rosa felt a shiver run down her spine at the sound, and her muscles tensed instinctively. She approached Catherine slowly and apprehensively. When she came closer, she could hear that Catherine was whispering the same few words, over and over again. He loves me. He loves me not. Catherine giggled. He loves me. He loves me not. Catherine, are you all right? Rosa stepped next to Catherine and peered at her outstretched hand. In the dim light, it took a moment for her to make sense of what she saw. Oh, shit! Catherine was scratching at the wall. The damage she had done to the wall was nothing compared to what she had done to her fingers. They were dripping from blood where her skin was cracked and peeled back. God! Kath? Oh my god, Catherine, stop! Rosa's guts twisted horribly. She grabbed Catherine's shoulder and turned her around, away from the wall. She blinked a couple of times before finally reacting to Rosa's presence. Tears welled up in Catherine's bloodshot eyes at the sight of her friend, spilling over her pale cheeks and chapped lips. She held on tightly to Rosa and started sobbing uncontrollably. Kath, what's going on? Why are you hurting yourself? Catherine tried to pull herself together as best she could, wiping her nose on the sleeve of her bloody dress. It was heart-wrenching to look at the mess that her friend had become. Oh, Rosa, you need to help me. You need to protect me from him. Don't let him touch me. Who? Let him what? Why do you need me to protect you? Suddenly, Catherine shushed, a finger to her lips, with a scared expression on her face. She leaned an ear towards the door and listened intensely for a moment. Oh, he's here? The scared expression turned into manic and frightened glee. I think he's coming. Guillem, honey. Guillem, I love you. After yelling the last words, Catherine started sobbing again, with more tears streaming down her face. Before Rosa could try to console her, however, her sobs faded into hysterical laughter. It barely left time for her to gasp for breath. Oh, Guillem, I love the way you pull me close to hug me, and how kind you are to everyone you meet. And your eyes. What's going on here? Guillem stood in the door, frowning. His eyes wandered across the room and caught sight of Catherine. His face froze in shock. Catherine stared wide-eyed for a moment, then snarled at him like a vicious animal. You bastard! Get out of my room! Get lost! She stormed over to the desk and grabbed a letter opener from the table. With this weapon in a firm grip and malice in her eyes, she rushed to Guillem. Don't you dare show your face to me! Catherine, no! The knife plunged into Guillem's arm. Blood quickly stained his sleeve red, but Catherine only recoiled to strike back, with no hint of stopping. Oh my god! Catherine! They wrestled for a moment until Guillem was able to grab Catherine's hand. She dropped the letter opener and slumped to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. Rosa quickly picked up the blade and stepped out of reach. When she turned around again, Guillem had already pulled Catherine into a tight embrace. Between her sobs and hiccups, Rosa could hear her apologizing. God, I'm so sorry, Guillem. What? I'm so sorry. Do you love me? Please, Guillem, do you love me? She repeated the question over and over again, no matter how many times Guillem reassured her. It was probably a good idea to find something to calm her down. Rosa didn't feel completely at ease doing so, but she left her friend alone with the Marquis for a few minutes. Later she returned with a glass of water laced with valerian root. Guillem had already coaxed Catherine to lie down on her bed, while Rosa helped her drink the nightcap. They watched her in silence as she drifted into a fitful sleep. Guillem and Rosa left the room. They didn't speak for a while, both still dazed and shocked by the turn of events. How's your arm? Guillem hid the injured arm away from view. Fine. Just a scratch. The bleeding hadn't stopped yet. Rosa could tell the cut was deeper than Guillem let on. What's happening? What's gotten into Catherine? Guillem just shrugged with a cold expression of worry on his face. I wish I knew, Rosa. The state she's in scares me, to be honest. It might be an onset of an episode waiting to happen, like her sister before. Rosa's mouth tightened. How dare you say that? She's not crazy. Rosa searched his face for traces of a lie, but it was like a mask contorted by worry. She couldn't tell whether he was lying or telling the truth. She asked me to protect her from you. Did you hurt her? You know I wouldn't. She's unwell. It seems I'm the target of her psychotic state. That's all I know. But why? Stop. Stop it, Rosa. It hurts me too, seeing her like this. Please stop questioning me further. I'm going to call for a physician. Please stay with her in the meantime. See that she doesn't harm herself again. For a moment he met her eyes. Before she could say more, however, he turned around and left. See if his pants have caught fire yet, child. There was nothing she could do about him for now. Rosa left to get a bowl of fresh water and a towel to tend to Catherine's fingers. Catherine had an uneasy sleep while Rosa cleaned her wounds as best as she could. She muttered, squealed, and whimpered like a child. It seemed she was having a nightmare, but Rosa didn't wake her before the physician arrived. Instead, she stroked her hair, told her that everything would be all right. She tried to appease the growing confusion of voices in her head. What had happened between Catherine and Guillem? Their relationship was often erratic, but Rosa dismissed the possibility that it was one of their usual fights. Rosa remembered Catherine's face, filled with utter spite at the man. She had never seen that much hatred in Catherine. After a few moments, Catherine's eyelids fluttered open. She looked around with some confusion, and then her gaze settled on Rosa. Tears welled up in her eyes. Rosa! Rosa held her outstretched hand. Her heart broke when she saw Catherine wince. Oh, Rosa, I'm so scared. Everything's such a mess. It's going to be all right, Catherine. Don't worry. Just try to sleep some more. No, you don't understand. Catherine tried to sit up, but Rosa pushed her down gently. You need rest, Kath. I hate him. This is all his fault. She sniffed, but settled down on her pillow once more. When she spoke again, it was in a whisper. Rosa, She chewed on her dry, chapped lips for a moment, as if she couldn't get the words out. I don't think I love him anymore. What? A dry sob escaped her, followed by tears rolling down her cheeks. Had Catherine really just said that? But I don't understand this. When I think of him, Her voice cracked. She shuddered under the blanket like an ill breeze had just sprung up in the room. It's like bugs are crawling under my skin. I can't bear to look at him anymore. I just can't. I can't even say his name. Why? Do you remember when exactly you started feeling this way? That night. Rosa winced. Catherine covered her face with her hands. It was a horrible night. Rosa's chest hurt. Was this her fault? She didn't know what she had done, but didn't she do something to her? I'm sorry. Catherine went on like she hadn't heard her. I went to his room. We spent the night together. Rosa waited for Catherine to continue, but the girl stared blankly. She just stopped speaking, as if forgetting she ever spoke at all. Kath, did he hurt you that night? No. Maybe? Catherine shook her head. I don't know. She grabbed her head and sobbed. The grip on Rosa's heart tightened. How can this be? Her eyes drowned in tears. I love him, Rosa, don't I? I remember everything. I love him, I know I do. I'm sure I do. But I hate him, too, to the very core. I want to hurt him and punish him. For something. I want to snuff out the breath from his throat. But sometimes Catherine's eyes went blank. I just don't care for him at all. Sometimes I feel nothing. Nothing at all. And that scares me more. She laid on the bed, quiet now, letting the tears flow out of her eyes without wiping them. I'm going mad, Rosa. Catherine. I am, aren't I? Like my sister, like my mother. It runs in our blood. They said I'm a child of a mad woman. They said I'm going to turn out exactly like her. Rosa stroked her hair and tried her very best to soothe her, saying everything would be all right. They were empty words, but she didn't know what else to say. She wanted them to be true so badly, for her friend's sake as well as her own. Was Guillem really the cause of Catherine's confusion and pain? Pangs of guilt pricked her like tiny needles. Or was this her fault? Rubbish, you fool! This is all his fault. I can feel it. We must get to the bottom of this. Yes, Mother. Rosa looked down on her best friend and nodded slightly to herself. Everything will be all right, Catherine. I promise. She would make it all right somehow. She had to. The physician arrived, but he did little to help Catherine. Catherine never regained her personality. She remained moody and irritable, breaking out into fits of hysterical laughter or heartbreaking sobs at seemingly random intervals. Guillem and Rosa would take turns to tend to her. Her moods fluctuated, her temper uncontrollable. There were times she begged for attention from Guillem, almost clinging to him to despair, never letting him out of her sight. Other times she couldn't stand his very presence. Soon neither Guillem nor Rosa could console her anymore. She withdrew entirely from the household. She starved herself, stopped coming to the meals, stopped caring for herself. Her manic episodes degraded to long stretches of blank silence. Emptiness ruled her life. Looking at her eyes in those last days, it was like a fire had been snuffed out behind them, like the star that had been shining through them had imploded. Well, that was a long fucking chapter. I just wanted to do one or two chapters, and that whole chapter took an hour and a half, so fuck, I guess we're just gonna stop at this one. Where is the save? Save. Empty slot. Here we go. So yeah, this is a weird, interesting thing. I'm kind of impressed considering it's just a free-to-play thing on Steam, so, like, it's actually got a pretty decent plot going. So I'll probably play this again sometime. Hopefully there's no more awkward sex scenes. It was really uncomfortable to have to read that. But anyway, I will see you guys another time. Bye for now.